Bom dia. Let me first start with the words of gratitude to the organizers for bringing me here, but also with the words of condolence. What happened yesterday has been a big tragedy, and I extend my deepest sympathy to all the family members who lost their loved ones. I am the publisher. I'm the publisher, but I was also a writer, translator, photographer, DTP operator, and bookseller. So I may say I know almost all parts of the publishing world, their good and bad sides. All the professions I somehow represent here are demanding and challenging, but what is common for all of us is the passion for books. Books are products unlike any other, but they are products nonetheless, subject to legislation like many other products, yet with intrinsically different qualities. Over the past 2 days, we have discussed reading and its importance for personal development and social cohesion. We all agree that readers are educated and informed citizens, whom our democracies need to thrive. I will not revisit this topic, as my point is different. Because books are products, the legislation that affects them does not always distinguish between products that can be mass-produced and books, these works of the mind which, once published, must find readership. These enlightened prototypes that publishers strive to ensure that they are appreciated at their true value and read by as many people as possible. The Federation of European Publishers that I'm at head of comprises 31 national associations of publishers of books, scientific journals, and educational content in both paper and digital formats, including audio. The Portuguese Publishers Association was a founding member of FEP. At national level, FEP members support or develop initiatives to promote reading that best meet the needs of their fellow citizens. But for these books to exist, for us, publishers, to be able to finance their creation, production, and distribution, the legislation that affects them must recognize their specific characteristics. This is what publishers associations and at European level, the Federation of European Publishers are working towards. But before continuing, allow me to say a few words about the colleague who left us a few months ago, Pedro Sobral. Pedro joined the FEP some years ago in 2019, and we immediately benefited from his experience and dynamism, not to mention his friendship. We miss Pedro, as I am sure all his other colleagues do. He was a key actor in the work of both the Portuguese Association and FEP. While national publishers' associations are obviously active in the field of lobbying, but also often organize fairs and other events for the members, you can easily imagine that representing publishers is the FEP's main occupation. This is why, before each European Parliament election, we publish a manifesto that we send to the political parties and outgoing MEPs, members of Parliament. So this is the printed version of the latest edition of our manifesto, just to show you the visualization of that. Thanks to our members, the manifesto finds its way to national political parties and candidates. After the elections, as our demands remain the same, we use this document as a useful list for new members of Parliament who will be invited to adopt legislation during their mandate, legislation that will have an impact on our activities. So what does this manifesto contain? What forms the backbone of legislation that would have a positive effect on publishing books and consequently on reading? Because in order to encourage reading, it is essential that we publish high-quality books that reflect the complexity of society, that authors are encouraged to write, and that booksellers can work in good conditions, and so on. Our manifesto is based on 3 keywords: create, innovate, and sustain. Let's start with create. To be able to create, we need first and foremost strong copyright rules. Without them, there can be no long-term creation, no quality creation. Copyright laws must be balanced and promote creation. Too often, copyright is used as a budgetary adjustment variable, notably in education. You have heard politicians stress the importance of textbooks to learn, but too often these are replaced by photocopies. While these may be acceptable on occasion, we must ensure that these photocopies are only used as a supplement. This is essential if we want to offer teachers and pupils a choice of a variety of textbooks. The same thing with libraries. As far as these institutions are concerned, the main issue is budgetary. Libraries must be given sufficient resources to enable them to build up collections worthy of the name. It is not authors and the publishers who should suffer from a lack of investment. We are therefore calling for copyright laws that protect creativity and investment. This also means copyright laws that enable us to combat piracy, particularly online. This brings me straight to the subject of artificial intelligence, which MEP Axel Voss spoke about yesterday. Even if they contest it in court, there is clear evidence that the developers of this artificial intelligence, which is actually poorly named, it should have been called deep learning, have shamelessly copied data sets containing millions of copyrighted books, while perfectly knowing the illegal origin of their sources. We are, of course, asking them to report which sources they used, and depending on the discussions we will have with them, to remove these works or pay for their use. Publishers have been pioneers in the area of opt-out, early on investing in the creation of a text and data mining reservation protocol within the World Wide Web Consortium. These opt-outs must be respected. However, it is clear that the developers of many AI tools ignore them, unfortunately. Still on the subject of AI, the question of works created with the assistance of AI must be resolved in order to protect human creation. Create means also helping publishers translate books from foreign languages, as the Director General pointed out yesterday. With the European Union set to adopt a new budgetary framework in the coming months, and the announcement of a merger between programs supporting culture, audiovisual media, and citizenship, it is essential that support for translation will be increased and simplified. We must also help associations to continue supporting innovation and exchanges between countries. Create means also never forgetting that freedom of expression is a fragile principle and that even in our democracies, it is constantly being challenged. Our manifesto demands that EU supports our Ukrainian friends and colleagues by supporting publishing in Ukraine. At our last General Assembly, we called for the release of prisoners of conscience everywhere, and notably in Russia and Belarus, but also in Algeria, where the Franco-Algerian writer Boualem Sansal has been in prison for more than 9 months now, simply for writing. This is not acceptable, and the EU must act. Although not an EU topic, FEP wanted to support in its manifesto a national concrete action that supports reading and the sector that is cultural vouchers. These are being called into question in many countries, but the opposite should be the case. They should be extended and increased. Innovate. I have spoken to you about the need to support this sector in terms of innovation, particularly by giving them access to funding under Creative Europe, but also in programs such as Horizon Europe, currently worth almost 100 billion euros over 7 years. Our sector has been behind so many standards, from ISBN to EPUB. Today, in order to remain competitive, it must continue to invest in research and development. This is particularly true around accessibility, which gives us the opportunity to reach new audiences, but requires substantial investment, and this is especially important for SMEs. To innovate, we need to be able to envisage a market, and let me repeat myself, transparency in artificial intelligence is essential, as is respect for intellectual property. Fighting piracy with appropriate legal tools is more necessary than ever if our sector is continue to innovate. And sustain. Printing books is responsible. We work hard to avoid overproduction and invest in environmentally responsible production. Printing a book is different from other many uses of paper, which, as you have heard, is covered by the deforestation regulation. We continue to call for the exclusion of books, not to avoid our responsibilities. We want to work with environmentally responsible suppliers. But because of these obligations resulting from the regulation, which we are still discovering details of application little by little, will place a disproportionate burden on the sector. And in a completely different area, we oppose the draft of late payment regulation, which would require us to demand payment from booksellers within 30 days, a deadline that would jeopardize the entire book chain. The Parliament listened to us and on a symbolic day, the 23rd of April 2024, announced the draft of law excluding books from the scope of the legislation. But the ball is now on the Member States' court, and we are counting on our members, publishers, associations such as Appel, to continue to urge the ministers concerned to understand the absurdity of this legislation when it comes to our sector. I hope that this brief overview of the issues dealt with at European level has given you an insight into the complexity of the matters that the FEP must deal with. It can only do so with the support and active assistance of its members. We work for them, for you. To conclude on a positive note, allow me to address the issue of taxation. In principle, this is a prerogative of the member states. This is true, but this must happen within a framework established by the European Union. Over the years, the FEP has succeeded in changing the definition of books, first to allow audiobooks to benefit from the reduced rate, then e-books, and most recently to allow books to benefit from a zero rate. The good news comes from Denmark, which has just announced that books will go from a VAT rate of 25%, the highest in Europe, to zero, joining the Czech Republic and Ireland. I hope that European governments will be inspired by the Danish example and lower VAT to zero. And just to conclude, yesterday we witnessed here the presence of the President of the Portuguese Republic, Mr. Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. I must admit that I was overjoyed by his personality and his love for books. This is something truly unique, not only in Europe, but in the world. I hope you Portuguese people realize what treasure you have. After listening to his inspiring words, I came up with the thought that we should add to our manifesto a call to obligatory reading for the politicians. Oh, that... or that the leader of the country should be a book lover. I hope, and the word would look different, I'm sure. And I hope you don't mind me quoting him. Those who don't read give up on the future. These words will stay with me a long time. Well done on this conference, which addresses issues that are so important to our sector. Thank you again for continuing to support the FEP in its many endeavors. Obrigado.